So right now I have my After Effects project open, and I have a couple of assets that I could use in my project, but there's not really anything for me to do until I create a composition. A composition, or comp for short, is the main thing that you're going to work on in After Effects. It is like the file of After Effects. So whereas Photoshop might work with a photograph and Illustrator might work with a document or an artboard, or Audition works with a audio file or a waveform. The composition is the main thing you work on in Adobe After Effects. So we need to create some compositions. You can do this in two ways. You can go to Composition and choose New. You can also come down here into the project panel and click Create a New Composition. Or if you have an asset that you want to be the actual composition, you can drag it into the composition window and it'll create a new composition. For right now, I just want to start from scratch, so I'll go ahead and click New Composition here, and it'll bring up the composition settings. This is where you're going to want to name this composition. So for this one, it's going to be something called Pixel Poly. And that's where I'm going to do an effect called Pixel Poly. So I just want to name it so it makes sense to me when I'm looking down here at the various comps. You can choose what size it's going to be, what preset. So if you're working in Europe, you're going to use PAL. If you're working in America, you're going to use NTSC. And you're usually going to come down here to the HDTV. And again, if you're working with NTSC or American television standards, you're going to work with 29.97 because our video is essentially 30 frames per second, whereas with PAL, it works with 24 frames per second. So usually if you're working in the US, you want to do HDTV at 29.97. Okay, so usually the settings that it automatically comes up with are the perfect settings for your area. So we'll just leave that. Now we can choose how big we want this to be. 1920 by 1080 is high definition, but it's the smallest version of high definition. You can also look for YouTube preset sizes, and that'll show you like 720 by 480, 1280 by 7... I can't remember what that one is. And then there's 4K sizes that are much, much bigger. So 1920 by 1080 works for me, so I'll leave it at that. And again, it's going to show me a frame rate that's good for my country where I'm at right now. And then I do want full resolution, but you can also do this kind of preview of half or third resolution. And then you can choose when it should start and how long it should last. So my animation for this particular text, I only want it to be 6 seconds. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So remember, because it's 29.97 frames per second, then this should always be 30 or lower for me. So I'll go ahead and put 0.6 because I want this to last 6 seconds. I can also change my background color by clicking here, or I can use the sampler to choose a sample from any footage I might have up. I don't have anything right now, so we'll just leave it. We'll click OK, and it'll create the new comp. So we see this new comp in our project panel. The composition shows up in the composition window, and then we see this essentially timeline for the composition at the bottom. Also notice that it says Pixel Poly up here, and it has a little close X so that you can close this composition this way as well. Now let's say for some reason you need to change the comp settings. These are not set in stone. You can change them at any time you want to. So we'll go up to the composition window and choose composition settings. This is again where we can change the duration. That's usually what I'm going to use, or I'm going to change the background color. But if for some reason you need to change the size or you need to change the preset, you can do that as well. In addition, there's some advanced features, and you can also work with a different 3D renderer. Right now it's using the classic 3D that is a part of this program, but if you have Cinema 4D, it can use that as well, and that's kind of more advanced feature than what we're talking about with this video, but just know that that's there if you need to change those settings. So I'll go ahead and click OK, and now that my comp is ready to go, I can start adding some footage or animation, add some text, use these tools up here to start creating this composition.